Welcome to Garden Success with Skip Richter, the show designed to help you have a bountiful garden and a beautiful landscape. Call in now with your lawn and garden questions at 979-845-5689 or email your questions to gardensuccess@tamu.edu. And now, retired Texas A&M AgriLife Extension horticulturist Skip Richter.
Well, hello. Welcome to Garden Success. Good to have you with us today. We are going to visit about various things. Certainly we can visit about the things that are of interest to you. If you would like to give us a call at 979-845-5689, 979-845-5689, or by email at gardensuccess@tamu.edu, gardensuccess@tamu.edu. What are we going to talk about today? Well, we got quite a few emails that we're going to go through. I'll hopefully have time to give a little bit of advice on the kinds of things that might be of interest to you around town, and also just taking care of your lawn and landscape. We're going to start off by going to the phones and talking with Randy. Hello, Randy.
Hello, how are you, Skip?
I'm good, sir. What's up today?
I got a question on finding palmetto grass. Where could I find some of that at? I got some areas where the sun doesn't always hit that particular area, and they said this grass can take a little bit of shade, but I just didn't know where you could find it.
That's a good question. Palmetto is one of the more shade-tolerant St. Augustines. It's not night and day difference, but it's a little more shade-tolerant. There are a lot of people that just sell grass kind of the side of the road, grass sellers, and typically you're going to have trouble finding it there. I see it popping up here and there at places that sell other kinds of plants. They're not just grass retailers. But I can't tell you offhand where in town here you might be able to get it. You just have to call around to the usual suspects here in the area and see what they have. I do know as you get closer to urban areas, like Houston direction, you're going to find a number of places that carry it. I would need to probably do a little bit of a online search just to see. We got some major outlets. There's Moberger Turf. There's King Ranch Turf. Has a number of outlets in the greater Houston area. And then there are some others, but let me look, and if I find something and can have time here to pull something up before the end of the show, I'll say it on the air. Otherwise, I would just do a search for some of those turf providers.
Okay. When I do find it and I do put it down, is it something that I should, even though you've had all this rain lately, but is it something I should really hit it with some water for a few days in a row, or just when it looks like it needs it?
Well, anytime you're going to plant new turf, you want to make sure and get a lot of water on it early on. By the way, while we're talking here, I checked, and King Ranch is currently, it says they're out of stock on it. And they've got locations all over the place. But you might want to call them and just see, and maybe they could point you to somebody else who carries it. But anyway, so the idea is when that turf goes down, Randy, there's like a 3/4 of an inch of sand or clay soil on the roots, and so that means they cut the roots off at 3/4 of an inch deep, and so it essentially has almost no roots. So the goal of the first week, I generally recommend the first week water it twice a day. That doesn't mean you have to turn it into a swamp twice a day. It just means give it a good watering twice a day, and then for a week go to once a day, and then after that you're backing off toward more of a normal schedule. Maybe twice a week, but I generally water mine once a week or less. Once I get grass established, typically in the shade, like you're planting this, you should need it a lot less. Yeah. Okay,
so first week, twice a day hit it. Next week, once a day hit it, and then see where it's at that point.
Yeah, I think. Okay. I think that's it. I planted grass about almost a month ago now, and it was a lot cooler then, and I still was watering it regularly, because it's the first part that's the touch and go. If you mess up early and it gets too dry, you've really set it back, if not killed it. But if you if you can, get it through that, then it's much more forgiving. If you forgot to water it for a couple of weeks, it'll still be alive, once it's established. So that's kind of what we're looking at here.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, good. Well, I'll see if I can find any other sources of it around. I'll do that. Otherwise, check around, just see who's got what in at the time. A lot of the places that aren't turf places, it's kind of hit and miss what they happen to get in at the time.
Right. Okay. Well, I sure appreciate the info. Thank you a lot.
You bet. Thank you very much. Appreciate that call.
Okay.
Our phone number is 979-845-5689. 979-845-5689. If you want more information on turf in general, as far as the varieties and sources and things, you got two good sources. One is to go to the AgriTurf website. That's more the science of turf. What is zoysia? Where does zoysia grow? What are some of the more common varieties of zoysia you might want to consider that are proven? agriturf.tamu.edu. It's where you go for weed control advice. It's where you go for how to fertilize and just all the different things you would have as a homeowner. If you're looking at adding turf, there certainly is some stuff on planting on the AgriTurf website. But I would also add in there the Texas turfgrass producers, or actually it's Turfgrass Producers of Texas. Their website is texasgrass.com. That's easy to remember, texasgrass.com. And when you get there, you're going to find a lot of information, not only also on taking care of your lawns, but you're going to find out, what various growers are growing, and in some cases these are also retail outlets, so you can head over there and find out what they carry and how available it is and whatnot. So that is something that I would recommend that you go ahead and do. I was just kind of trying to search through here. Palmetto is one of the, I guess, somewhat newer, more popular St. Augustine's. There's definitely some newer ones that I think have their advantages over palmetto for various reasons. The old standard was Raleigh that everybody had forever, and I won't go into the pros and cons of every grass that's out there, but Raleigh is a standard. An old one is Floritam. We generally don't recommend it here. It has its place, as does every plant just about. It's very drought resistant and it's chinch bug resistant. Those two are huge. But it's a little bit rangier, tougher grass. For those of you who grew up maybe in the Midwest or someplace where you grew fescue or Kentucky bluegrass, those kinds of things. A little bit cooler climate than here. And then you come down and you see St. Augustine. It's like, what is that weed? Because it's a running grass. It's not a tuft type, clumping type grass. And so, but some people don't like it. I actually like it a lot. I grew up with it. I think it's good. I can tell you a lot of reasons why you should plant St. Augustine, despite the fact that a lot of people want to diss St. Augustine, especially for in full sun, trying to keep up with it with water. But that's a whole nother argument I'm willing to make, but I'm not going to bore all of you with all the details if you're not interested in that. Anyway, just something to think about. When you're getting ready to establish turf, what I was just telling Randy is so important. You need to make sure and give it good watering early on. And water it according to the root system. If you wet the soil 10 inches deep, then how is that going to help a root that's 3/4 of an inch long now because it just got dug up? Yes, having a foundation, having a bank account of water down lower is important, because as the roots go down, they don't even try to grow down into dry soil. But small amounts early on are important with that newly laid sod. And once it gets established, then you hear me like a broken record, or if you listen to Waterful Wednesdays with Jennifer Nations, you're going to hear the same kind of thing, and that's a good deep soaking on an infrequent basis. That's how we water lawns, a good soaking, and then let it dry out a little bit or considerably before you water again. But not with new turf. That's the exception. So if it seems a little confusing because I'm saying one thing and then next thing you know I'm saying something else, well, that's what's going on there. So I would say, and if Randy, if you're still listening, you might try giving Milberger Turf a call. I'm going to give you their number. They're a 979 phone number also. It's 979-240-9462, 979-240-9462. I do know they grow palmetto also, and they're not going to sell it to you retail, but they'll tell you who has that variety from there, who they deliver to, and whatnot, how you might go about it. I suspect a lot of it too will be how much do you want to buy. If you need 100 square feet, that's one thing. You go buy the little individual pieces somewhere. But if you want a better deal on a large area, then we're talking about pallets. And so. All right, well, that's turf. Our phone number, 979-845-5689, 845-5689. Feel free to give us a call. We'll be happy to visit about the kinds of things that interest you. Before I forget, I want to talk about some things that are going on around town right now. First of all, very important, here locally, the Master Gardeners of Brazos County, the AgriLife Extension Master Gardening group here in Brazos County, is having their open garden day this Saturday, May 11th, just around the corner. It starts at 9 a.m. and it goes through 11 a.m. So for 2 hours, they'll be out at the Demonstration Idea Garden, which is on Highway 21 West in Bryan. So the fast, easy way to tell you how to get there is if you're going 2818 north around the west side of Bryan. When you hit 21, you turn right, and within a quarter mile, you will see the gardens on the right-hand side. So it's real close there, easy to get to. Of course, you can come at it from Texas Avenue or however you want. But what happens out there on the open garden day is master gardeners are out working. They're out there doing things. They're on hand to talk to you about things that interest you. Maybe rainwater harvesting. They're going to have a group out there talking about rainwater harvesting, how to set up a rain barrel. There'll be demonstrations and information on composting. They have the compost bins out there. Maybe you have questions about vegetables or Texas superstar plants or building a pollinator garden or a rose garden. Go on out there. It's free. There's no charge at all. Take the kiddos with you. Just, have a little word with them about crawling through garden beds and pulling up things. They'll be happy to host them out there as well, because teaching kids about gardening is very, very important also. Let's go to the phones now and talk to Sita. Hello, Sita.
Hi there. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
I am a beekeeper, and I'm having a terrible time figuring out nectar flow. Everything is upside down, and aside from wanting to know how long after a deluge of rain like we had, is there going to be pollen and nectar again, or is the flower exhausted and I have to wait, if it's renominate, till we get another bloom? How do I navigate this, sir?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, we really depending on the wild blooms of nature, right? That's the foundation for having plenty for bees to do. But then we have our gardens, which are also helpful. Things we plant in the yard and landscape can be helpful. Are you just a few hives producer, or do you have a lot of bees?
I have a few hives, and I'm friends with lots of other beekeepers, and we're all just throwing up our hands because the bloom time is just so way off this year.
Yeah, they're off. Vitex has kicked in finally, so we got some of that going on. But I would there are several things you can do. You can talk to the Brazos Valley beekeepers. You may already be a member of them, but talk to them about it. As far as your basic question was, how long until the blooms kick back in? Plants that are able just to keep on blooming for a longer period are going to kick back in pretty quick. Some plants kind of have their one-shot wonders. Our bluebonnets, for example, when they go down, that's it.
Right.
There's no more blooms on them. Other things, like I mentioned, Vitex, it'll continue on for a while. There's a lot of things in the landscape that we plant that come back and continue to bloom and bloom. So are you thinking more in terms of flowers for your landscape, or are you thinking maybe you have a piece of property?
I have a piece of property and I landscape for bees, but so if we get a rain like we just had, and it rinses all the pollen and the nectar out, will a flower regenerate that, a single flower, or the plant has to bloom a new flower?
Well, it's
Does
not
that
so.
make sense?
Yeah,
Or-
it's not so much that it like rinses the nectar out. Those blooms tend to get cast off, especially when they're pounded by rain. But it
okay.
would generate a new flower. But for a lot of plants, that's an ongoing basis. There's always new flowers coming on.
Right. Right. Okay.
Salvias and things. Mexican heather is a one that we use in our landscapes, and it just keeps blooming, and the bees love it. I think you're going to end up with blooms pretty quickly, but it's going to depend on the plant and then the temperatures that we have.
Okay.
So I don't know that there's a real black and white answer to that, but I guess the answer in general is yeah, they're gonna bloom again. You're gonna get more blooms.
Well, that's great. Well, I thank you, and I hope you have a great day and a happy heart. Thanks for all you do for our community.
Thank you, Sita. I appreciate that. I've noticed that in nature there's a march, like maybe a parade of blooms as you go through the year. I mentioned Vitex was kind of kicking in, the blue one you see all around town. There's also a white type of Vitex. There's a number of different kinds of weeds and brush that have their little cycle in nature as we go through the seasons. Uh, in gardening, we kind of joke about the fact that in the spring there's all these pink and blue and other colors of wildflowers, and then by summertime it turns into yellow composite flowers, daisy
Right.
type blooms and stuff. So it's still going. I didn't realize I was still talking to you. I was just thinking out loud on the air there.
That's okay. Well, I appreciate you, and thanks a lot.
All right, bye-bye. Appreciate that very much. So let's just talk about bees for just a second. There are a lot of things we can do in our landscapes for bees. Right now, I've got some broccoli that I didn't get the heads picked on, and it is blooming, and the bees are all over it. And those blooms just go and go and go. Any kind of cucurbit plant, like a broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, kohlrabi, Brussels sprouts, all of that stuff is in the cucurbit, not cucurbit, I'm sorry. The blue leaf vegetables, cold crops, there we go. Cruciferous vegetables, those are blooming, and I let mine bloom. If you grow arugula, it blooms and things. And bees like a lot of those flowers, and that's helpful for them as well as for beneficial insects. A lot of us like to attract beneficial insects as well. There are some plants that bees just like a lot more than others, and so the more you can have a foundation of those, the better. I watch holly plants in the landscape, like Burford holly. When they bloom, the bees love holly blooms, yopon blooms, and others. And so I think we just need to build landscapes that are designed around that cycle where there's always something coming in to bloom. Spring is easy, but after the initial spring flush, then what? And I saw there's a rose that's being promoted now. It's kind of it's a floribunda, but it has single blooms where you can actually see the little pollen structures because the bloom is opened up. It's not what you think of when you picture a cut flower rose. And it's popular with bees. A lot of roses are very popular with bees as well. Something to remember when you're planting for bees is bees like to go someplace where there's a lot of a bloom. To have like one zinnia flower and then one sunflower and then one Mexican heather, to use that one again. That's not nearly as attractive or helpful as when a bee can come and they can work a patch of blooms. That's why fields of wildflowers are so important. And when you have a bunch of blooming brush in the countryside that bees like. And so trying to plan your landscape a little bit more like that, and that's where trees and shrubs come in. We have trees and shrubs that are attractive to bees, and there you have a big giant canopy, and so you can have a lot of blooms, and some of them bloom for longer periods of time, some for shorter. But don't forget trees and shrubs when you're planting to support the bees that you have around the property. Let's see here. See, I don't know if you're still listening, but one resource that I go to for a lot of bee stuff, and there are a lot of bee companies out there. I'm not here to promote this or that company on this show, but the Bee Supply is out in Dayton, Texas. There's also one over on Interstate 35. I think it's Round Rock, somewhere around there, that area. They are so helpful. I mean, you can be a gardener calling them with a bee question. They'll take time to answer your question. And I use the one out in Dayton myself for information. I've called Paul over there and others. And they, if you want to ask them questions like that, they'll be happy to work with you. They are a business. They're in business to do that, do that sort of thing. But they are very helpful. A lot of times, you're just sitting nickel and diming around with questions and curiosities, and a lot of companies just aren't able to take time to do that. But I found that the Bee Supply is pretty good about that. So you might want to give them a call, see how that goes. But warning, be warned, they may talk you into putting in beehives before you know it. That's cool. We're going to go to the phones now. We're going to talk to Mark. Hello, Mark.
How you doing, Skip?
I'm good.
Appreciate you taking my call today.
You bet.
I had two questions, pretty simple. I just recently purchased 2 Vitex trees.
Mm-hmm.
They were in 15-gallon pots. I had them delivered yesterday, and I live in College Station in an area where new construction, and they have the pretty heavily clayed soil. I didn't know. I've been reading conflicting things online. Once I dig the hole, I try to make a decent-sized hole. Once I did all that, I wasn't sure if there's something I should either put underneath the trees themselves or to backfill with to help with drainage.
Good question. So let me just comment. Vitex is very forgiving. Those things are used in highway plantings because they're so darn tough. They don't have to be pampered so much. So they're pretty tolerant of most things other than us being in a swamp, being overwatered or a poorly drained soil. But in general, when you're planting anything, especially shrubs, you want a little bit of a raised bed area so that it drains well. If the area is a heavy clay, low-lying, and poor drainage. If that's not a problem, then raised beds aren't so important in it. If you're going to amend the soil, you want to amend the soil throughout the area, throughout the bed area. Or if it's not a raised bed, still you want to amend a larger area, as large as you can do, practically speaking, and then dig the hole and plant the plant. To dig a hole in clay and to fill it full of a nice composty mix you put in there with the plant, that just creates an underground bathtub that decomposing organic matter goes anaerobic, and it starts to smell like a gas leak, and it is very bad for the plant too. So rather than amend the hole, amend everything, then dig the hole and use that amended soil you dug out to plant back in and water it in really well. And I think that'll get you off to success. If the Vitex you bought has been in a container for a while and it's got roots that are going around and around, cutting those in 3 or 4 places around the outside of that cylinder that comes out of the pot is good, because the plant will branch roots and fill back in and establish much better than if it's left all wound up underground.
Understood. Would you mix any like peat moss and mulching when you're amending that soil, or sand?
No.
What would you recommend?
No, I wouldn't. I would just use. Okay. Is your soil heavy clay?
It's heavy clay after you go down about 6 inches.
Okay. I would just use composted organic matter. Just get a good source of compost. Are you here local in the Bryan College Station area?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, you can buy it by the bag, or you can go out to the, what's it called, Twin Oaks area. Twin Oaks north of town, I believe, is where they produce the landfill, where you can go pick up bulk compost. Very economical up there. And just put down 4 inches or so and mix it in as deeply as you can. That would be one approach to it. It also helps with the clay to put in a expanded shale mix. Think of it as that old, remember the old gray kitty litter that was so dusty everybody used? Imagine that's been superheated to cause it to swell and become very porous. That AgriLife Extension did some research up in a number of areas, but in Dallas in a heavy black clay soil for rose planting, and they found a great benefit from expanded shale. But you got to put several inches of it down too, not just a few particles here and there. But again, Vitex it's a tough plant, and so I wouldn't it's not like you're planting an azalea or something where you got to hold your mouth right in addition to doing everything right in order for it to survive. I mean, it's a pretty tough plant. So, yeah.
I had one other very brief question, sir. When the trees got delivered, there was some of the bark, probably about 6 square inches on one side, got damaged. Trees are about 1.5 inches in diameter at the base. Is there anything you put around that or protect it with, or is there something to worry about?
On the string trimmer you're talking about?
On the main base, yeah.
Right, being hit. Yeah, anything that's a woody shrub, tree, or vine, you got to keep the lawnmowers and the weed eaters away, because that is serious damage instantly when you're trying to be careful and accidentally it hits it. So I, number one, would have a mulched area as wide as you can, but at least a foot out, just to keep the lawnmower and the weed eater away. Wider is even better if you want good early growth. If you are just talking about protecting the base, there are things you can put around the plant itself to protect it, trunk wraps and things. Generally, I don't use those. And on a Vitex, the way it multi-sprouts out of the bottom, it's not like you just have a single trunk most of the time that you're trying to deal with. So those trunk wraps don't really lend themselves to that. But all it takes is a little mulched area to keep it weed-free under there, and the plant will grow better as a result, too.
I just specifically meant it got damaged in travel. That's what I'm saying. It had an exposed area. Is there any concern over like long term, or is there anything you could wrap around it to protect it from, I guess, bugs getting in there or something like that?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I'd leave it exposed and unwrapped. It will heal and it will close over as that tree gets established and gets some vigor in it. It's going to do that really fast. There's no special treatment to be done. And in fact, there wrapping it, you might be creating a little environment that's more conducive to both decay and insects hiding out in there.
All right. Well, I really appreciate your time today, sir. Very helpful to me. Thank you.
Thank you for the call.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. You as well. Our phone number is 979-845-5689, 979-845-5689, or by email, gardensuccess@tamu.edu. Had a question come in from Rita about some nectarines, and her nectarines are doing a couple of things. Number one, there's splits in the nectarine, and number two, there's like a little Siamese twin nectarine attached to the big normal-ish nectarine. Well, let's do them in that order. The splits can be due to a physical injury. They can be due to the plant growing and suddenly the fruit starts to swell faster than the skin, and it causes a split in it. That's very common on tomatoes when you have a wet period following a dry period. But it's going to be some kind of thing like that on the nectarine. As far as the little Siamese twin on the fruit, those are called twins, and twin peaches, twin nectarines are not uncommon. When let's see, what is it that causes those? Is it it's when the fruit is being set in the fall. I'm trying to remember the conditions that cause that. But anyway, it's something that happens when the buds are even being made before you ever see a bloom. And that's late summer and fall when that can occur. And I want to say it's drought conditions, but I don't know that I need to go back to my pomology and hunt that down. But anyway, something like that is happening. So in the spring when that happens, it just happens. There's nothing to do about it. There's certainly nothing to spray on it or apply to it or anything like that. And you just have to kind of make sure that during the late summer and fall, that's when our fruit trees are setting their buds for next year, as well as spring blooming plants are setting their buds for next year. And we want to avoid stresses to them at that particular point in time. So for now, what I do, with peaches is when you get in there to do thinning, which we would do early in the spring, starting pretty much at the end of bloom until they're preferably get them done by the time they're thumb-sized. But you can selectively thin out the twins and leave the ones that are normal when you're doing your thinning decisions. That would be one way to manage to manage that as you go through. Had a question come in from Shannon. Shannon has a Don Juan rose, and it has all this kind of a, how do we describe it? It's like a kind of a furryish, rusty red looking material on it, and those are aphids actually. Aphids are really happy with new succulent rose growth, and you will see them not on the old canes but in the tender new growth, and they just line up, they put their mouth in the aphid and they suck the juices out, and that's what that is. They can cause deformity, especially when they occur in large numbers. A few aphids here and there is no huge cause for alarm, but they're easy to control. One way to control them is to use insecticidal soap. Do that early in the morning when it's cool. Insecticidal soap is not a poison, it kills them physically. They have little waxy coated bodies that the cuticles on their bodies soap destroys that, and it kills them that way. So why did I tell you that? Well, because you have to give them a bath for soap to work. Kind of like us. And so if you spray one side of the chute and not the other side, you're only going to kill the ones you gave a bath, not the other side that stayed dry. So you soap that way. Do it early in the morning when we get really warm and the sun bakes down on soapy leaves and things. You can get some plant burn. You can avoid that by doing it early in the morning. Another option would be to use something that contains spinosad. Spinosad. You can use that on them as well. It's both soap and spinosad are considered organic in the sense that they can be certified as organic products. So that's what I would do, Shannon. I think that will take care of those roses. I've had a bunch of aphids on my roses, and just to be honest, I haven't gotten around to taking care of them. It's not something I get all alarmed about, but it would be good when they're clustered like this to deal with them. Elizabeth emails and has a question about Gaillardia. Gaillardia is the flower that is referred to as Indian blanket flower. Some of you are familiar with that. And this particular Gaillardia symptom is the leaves have white, roundish spots all over them. Some cases the roundish tan area is falling out of the leaf. In some cases it's not. That is one of two things. It could be, this is the longer shot, it could be a little tiny caterpillar that's chewing underneath that leaf, and it's so small that the jaws can't chew all the way through the leaf. I don't think that is the case here based on the symptoms I see. I think what you're looking at is damage from the four-lined plant bug. Four-lined plant bug. Guess what? You look at it and it has 4 lines on its back. They're kind of a chartreuse color, greenish yellow with black lines, and it sucks juices out, injects a toxin in those little spots. It turns out to be a round spot. Sucks the juices out. They're hard to find, hard to catch. They're shy. They run away. They fall off. But they sure do damage. And we're seeing them a lot this year. I've already had more than one call on the 4-line plant bug. What do you do? Well, in mild cases, you ignore them. You just go on. The plant's not going to be killed by them. It looks bad when there are enough of them. The other thing would be to spray, and when you spray, you're going to have to use something that's got packs a punch. A poison to kill them, insecticide. And getting good coverage is important, and making sure you start sooner rather than later. Some of the photos in the picture are far enough along that there's not a whole lot of leaf left to protect. So you just have to make that management decision, Elizabeth, on those. But that is the 4-lined plant bug. Let's go to the phones now. We're going to talk first to Kate. Hello, Kate.
Hello. Excuse me. Just getting over the mother of all cold.
Oh, boy.
Newly planted redbud tree. It when I bought it, it was already, I don't know, several years old, I guess, and it's trained with a single trunk, and then up about 5 feet or so, then it had been allowed branches to branch out, and everything was green and happy. And then last summer, it was so darn hot. I swear I'm not exaggerating. It burned some of the leaves, but I mean, it really burned some of the young little barely sprouted leaves. They turned as black as charcoal.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, made it through, I think, through the winter viable. In fact, it even had some new leaves sprout out much lower down on the trunk, and I knew I didn't want to have branches that low, but I decided, well, until it buds out this spring, I'm going to let those 3-foot-high leaves stay. And it looked like the upper branches were just about to bud out. They were getting kind of puffy looking, and they never popped open. They never leafed out. So now I've got like a scarecrow tree,
Mm-hmm.
red bud, that, you know, it has horizontal multiple branches at the top that are totally bare. And the only green part I've got is, you know, halfway up the trunk.
Mm-hmm.
And that's growing fine. But the roots have to be good because it's still making new leaves.
Okay.
What's going on up at the top?
Dieback from, you know, the heat and drought. Most likely different things can kill back a plant. But typically with drought conditions, and heat goes with drought because the hotter it is, the more water you need. And so you run into deficit a lot faster in hot weather than you would in cool weather. But the heat and the drought, the last part of the plant to get the water is the furthest parts from the roots because water is translocating up. And so what happened is the peripheral parts just died, and then the plant sort of, if I can anthropomorphize, it sort of drops back and attempts to regrow, thinking, okay, I'm going to pull back here and try it again from lower. And that's called trunk sprouting, and happens on everything from a giant oak tree to that's dying back to, in this case, your little redbud. And so if you're pretty convinced the outer part is dead, which by now no leaves indicates it probably is dead, then you just cut it back and either choose one trunk initially to become the main trunk, and then it'll branch and so on. Or you can, from different locations there, have trunks come out and end up with a multiple trunk tree. You just have to be real careful that you don't have real narrow branch angles that will be weak as the tree gets older.
You're saying I don't want narrow branch angles, or I do want
a bunch
narrow.
Of narrow. Like if you hold up with your fingers, hold up and make the number 2, that little V between your fingers is narrow, and as each finger gets larger, instead of it being a strong union, the bark starts pushing against, and it's pushing your 2 fingers apart, if that analogy makes sense. And so we would like, instead, like angles like between your index finger and your thumb, something maybe 45 degrees or 60 degrees.
I got you.
Now, we can't control every angle on all our trees. I'm just saying a lot of times you've got some narrow angles, and a multi-trunk tree will split all apart if all the trunks are trying to grow straight up.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't see the plant, but you can make that decision. I mean, you could choose to cut the top out if you feel like it's dead, scratch it and make sure there's no living underneath the bark up there. And then when you cut it out, you could leave more than one shoot, or you could just take it down to one. If you're going to take it down to one, I would tip the ones you're wanting to remove. Cut the end 3 or 4 inches out, and that will dwarf them, and leave them there through this summer season, and let the one that's going to be the trunk go untipped. And as a result, all the foliage on those that you left will produce carbohydrates that will support the growth of the one you're keeping. Does that make sense?
You gave me a lot of information. I hope I've digested it.
Yeah.
I appreciate all the help, but I guess I basically don't have a redbud tree anymore. I've got something, a bare trunk with two little horizontal sprouts with maybe 10 leaves on each one. And then all above it, if I scratch the exterior bark and there's nothing green, just cut it off.
If it's dead, it's dead. So yeah, if it's dead, cut it off. I'm just saying sometimes for one reason or another you may get another sprout because it hasn't really died. It's just lost the current foliage that it would have had out there.
Yeah, it got so close to budding.
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell when a new bud is swelling. And then the little twig branches were flexible. So I thought, oh, yeah, it's going to bud, but it never did.
Well, see if they're still flexible. I doubt they are. The fact that it was looking good and then it went backwards tells me I don't think they're living anymore. But anyway, I'm having to answer it over the phone here. So that's my best shot at it. But I think you're probably going to end up rebuilding from one of those shoots a new tree.
Sad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I know that you're not in the A&M anymore, but is it possible to send you photos or no?
You can email photos to gardensuccess@tamu.edu. All A&M websites, tamu.edu. So Garden Success, one word. All right.
Thank you so much, Skip.
All right. Hey, another thing you can do, Kate, is contact the AgriLife Extension office here in Brazos County. You've got an excellent horticulturist in Stephen Brugerhoff. He's fairly new to the county. I've known Stephen a long time, and if you wanted to send him some pictures, I know he could tackle that as well.
So he's the official extension agent.
He's the official one. I was the unofficial one for many years, about 4 years. Stephen's a real deal.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's go to Elizabeth now. Hello, Elizabeth. Oh, did I have the wrong person? Michael. We're going to go to Michael. How about that?
Howdy.
Hey, Michael.
I just heard you give some advice on the guy who's planting the vitex in the clay soil.
Yeah.
About expanded shale, potentially just to help with some drainage issues. Mm-hmm. Is that because of the clay, or is that drainage issues in general? So, like for example, I've got some like low-lying areas of the yard that I really just don't want to try to do French drains with. Yeah. And some beds that get kind of waterlogged. And I wondered if maybe incorporating some shale there would help, or if it's really for like the clay soils that are really, like tough. So yeah, what's your take on that?
It's the latter. It doesn't replace a French drain. Clay itself is dense, tiny particles that are very dense, and water and air can't move through there because there's no space for it to move. And so when you put shale in, it loosens that clay with think of it as on a microscopic-ish level, a porous rock that if there are enough of them in there, you're creating that space. Now, if you're down in the ground, it's kind of like, I like to use the analogy of an aquarium. In the bottom of an aquarium is gravel, and we all know water runs right through gravel. But because it's an aquarium, putting gravel in the bottom doesn't do anything, right? It's still waterlogged. It still holds water. And so neither can shale do anything. But when you have a raised bed where there's a potential for excess to drain away, shale can open up the soil that's in that bed and allow a downward movement or a sideways movement of water within the soil, and it helps that. But again, it doesn't replace a French drain. A French drain takes the water out of there and off-site.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thanks for clearing that up.
All right. You bet. Take care. Yeah, French drains are very helpful, and there are different versions, different ways we do that. And for those of you who have waterlogged areas, in my opinion, you have two options. One is when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And what does that mean? That means planting Louisiana iris, planting buttonbush, planting things that want to be in a swamp in that area. Cannas will do well in that too. And so when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, change your garden to what we call a rain garden. periodically through the year, it's going to be soggy, but that's okay. The plants can handle it. The second option is to get the water out of there. And there's two things we do. Number one, whatever's putting the water there, change it. Is it a gutter? Do you need a gutter on your house, or does a downspout need to be taken a different direction instead of dumping all the roof water in one spot? Is your neighbor's water sheeting across the surface over into your yard, and could it be redirected somehow? Those things. And the second version of this is to create a French drain so the excess water goes in the pipe and goes off somewhere that is lower. If you don't have a lower area to take the water to, then you need to pump it there, and that's legit. There's things called sump pumps we use in a lot of situations or in areas where people have basements. Sometime having, some way of getting water out of an area is important. So anyway, there are landscape companies that can go out and they can create a drainage system that goes into a box in the ground that's kind of, we'll call that a well. As water fills up, the pump kicks on and it literally pumps it. It can pump it uphill out to the street or wherever it needs to go to get off your property. So there's a lot of levels of this. We use the term French drain, generally meaning a gravity drain system that's underground. That has to be done right. It needs to drop about 1 inch every 10 feet. And so I was going to do one in my yard here in College Station, and I think in 150 feet I dropped about 5 inches, and that's just not enough. It's not enough to depend on that to drain. So I'm going to have to put a pump in when I do this, and it's coming soon. It's on the to-do list, if you know what I mean. I believe we have open lines if you'd like to give us a call. 845-5689, 979-845-5689, or by email, gardensuccess@tamu.edu. Got an email from Curdy, or Curdy. Curdy had an oak tree, and some bark came off of it, and they noticed some holes under the bark, and someone had said, well, that's termites, you got to cut it down. And after it's cut, I can see pictures. Nice, thanks, good pictures, Curdy. Sending me pictures of the wood that's underneath the bark, and then of the stump when it was cut off, or a piece of the stump. And what I see there is not termites. That is something killed the tissue on that side of the tree. I would be curious if that side that had the dead tissues, it's about half the tree, is pointing toward the southwest area. We had some serious cold in December of 21, and a lot of trees were killed. A lot of sections were killed. There's something called radial shake that happened in the trees where there's splits in it, and I see some evidence of that here. And when you kill the tissues in that area, then you end up, the bark has to callus and heal, close back over from the sides. It could be that. The holes in it are not termites. Those are a borer. Those oval holes are a type of borer that lives and does its life reproduction in the inside of the dead wood on the interior of the tree trunk. There are borers that eat through the bark, the living outer bark areas, the cambium, the phloem, xylem on the outside. And those kind sever the tree from the top and do result in death. This is not what I'm seeing here at all. So something caused the tissues to damage, followed by borers going in to infest the wood, and that is very common on a tree that's dying to see these secondary types of borers move in and cause these problems. But it wasn't termites. Termites can attack a tree. There's certain types that can, not just any kind, but formosan. There's formosan, drywood. What's the subterranean? A lot of different kinds of termites. But anyway, don't worry about them on this particular situation. We're going to go to the phones now and talk to Ernest. Hello, Ernest.
Hi, Skip. I have a question for you on my white gardenia. This is the second year that it's bloomed. This year, it put on blooms. They all fell off, and the leaves are falling off. I feed it regularly every 14 days, recommended food that came with it. Is there anything you can recommend to help this poor plant?
I'm sorry. Describe to me the problem as it progresses. It starts with what and goes to what?
The blooms came on. It put on a few flowers. They just started falling off. The leaves are falling off, turning yellow.
Okay.
And
so
it's looking pretty shabby.
The blooms like dried and turned tan and then fell off, or was it almost like a normal bloom shedding process?
It did flower some of them, but then the following ones just died off.
Okay. Well, that plant needs good, well-drained soil. It likes to be in a forest floor kind of soil, meaning not just plain old heavy clay, but a lot of composted organic matter in it, like forest soils can be because of all the leaves being dropped every year.
Okay, but I have it in a pot.
Okay. Well, are you pretty sure the drainage holes in the pot are functioning properly? Like if you watered too much?
Yeah, it's good, just draining through.
Okay, good. Well, okay. Then the next thing is in a container, the soil dries out faster because the root system is limited. The roots pump the water out. And so if that plant had been in the ground, it would have had a root system that reached way beyond the branches of that plant. In a container, the roots are all wadded up, so it uses the water that's available much faster than it would if it were in the ground. So any time that it could have dried out would have caused a loss of blooms or a dropping of some leaves. When you saw the yellowing of the leaves, do you remember, is it the older leaves first that yellowed, or was it the new?
No, it's the newer blooms that came on just dropped off.
But I mean the leaves that turned yellow, were they new leaves or
they're just
older leaves?
New and old leaves are falling off.
Okay. Something's wrong in the soil with the roots and the water. Too wet, too dry, I don't know. But for it to drop leaves like that, that's almost always connected to a water issue. Have you used any particular kind of fertilizer on it?
Yeah, I'm using what came with the plant. It was, something that my wife ordered.
Okay.
And it did well last year. Mm-hmm. So you recommend repotting it or just go ahead and putting it in the ground?
Gardenias don't like it here. They
I'm gathering that.
Yeah, we have high pH soils. We tend to have heavy clay soils, but I know this is in a pot, so it's not a factor. And they like acidic conditions, and they don't like sodium and bicarbonates, which are both in our water here. If
right.
you can water it with rainwater, if you can put a little rainwater in the
rainwater
corner of the house, yeah. Are you
I'm using rainwater.
Okay. Well, you're
yes.
doing everything right. Maybe you need to go out and give that plant
I'm
a
trying.
good talking to and say, look, what do you want from me here? Okay, rainwater. It's in a pot. You're keeping it adequately moist. It's not waterlogging. We're running out of common causes of leaves to turn yellow and fall off and blooms to fall off. Something.
I may just start over with it.
Something has stressed it, and I just can't tell you exactly what it is. Just based on the most common things seem to be eliminated through our conversation here. I'd lay the pot down. And by the way, what's the diameter of this pot? How far across?
It's in about a 5-gallon.
Okay.
5-gallon pot.
Okay, and is the plant? Would you say 2 times as
it's
wide as the pot? Okay, so it's.
It's adequate. I mean,
Okay.
I think it's adequate for the size.
Okay.
It was recommended with the soil.
Yeah, lay it on its side. Kind of bump the sides of the pot. Maybe press on it to loosen it, and then slide that root ball sideways out. Don't try to just pull it out of the pot upward. And take a look at the outer roots. There should be nice, creamy, healthy roots on the outside. If you're seeing water-soaked, brownish, blackish, almost, like the old tar-stained cigarette filter look, that.
Yeah, then that would be a little root rotting.
That is a root rot, and it could be brought on by a lot of different things, including too wet, too soggy. Even though it is draining extra, some of those soil materials just hold water too well, and they become mucky. And I'm I'm doing this through a phone call. I don't have my hands in the dirt there at your house looking at it. But these are some
Well, I'm
things
gonna take a look at it
that I
and
would
see what-
suggest you look at. Yeah, and if you see unhealthy roots, I might even consider taking a knife or something, cutting away outer roots, slicing through all the dead stuff, get that root system smaller, repot it up with some fresh mix, and be real careful on the watering to keep it moist, but don't overdo it.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
You have a great day.
You too. Appreciate it. We're going to go to Elena now on the phone. Hello, Lena.
Oh, hi, Skip. I'm so happy to have a chance to talk with you.
Good.
I only hope that you have a chance to look at my email I sent you today at noon. I supplied it with pictures and a short story. It's about red bud tree.
Okay.
And I was encouraged to call you because there was a lady earlier on who talked about her red bud tree as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe my case is more complicated than hers. If you see the pictures, you will see what I meant.
Yes.
Because the trunk of the tree and the leaves, it's eaten up by something.
Okay. So the leaves, that is not a concern. It certainly isn't good to have leaves that are tattered like that, but that's okay. That is not my tree's dying problem. Those leaves. It could be caterpillars have gotten to it. It could be when they were young and forming, some things chewed on them, and then the leaves unfurled, and now they're all tattered and things because they were damaged when they were forming. But don't worry about that right now. I don't see evidence of brand new damage on them either. The trunk, the holes in the trunk, if those holes are on the south and west side of the tree, which is possible, that is where you get the late day winter sun shining on the trunk and heating it up. Then when we have a cold snap, it kills those areas because they become less dormant and hardy because the sun was warming them up. And that you get the damage then on the south and west sides of the tree. And from the limited what I can see in the picture, it looks like it's mostly on one side of the tree. If that's wrong and it's all around, well, I'll be surprised because overall the canopy of the tree looks pretty good. And so I think what you've had is a section die there. You're probably going to have loose bark that'll come loose if you kind of pull on it. It maybe not just yet, but soon. And then the tree will start to callus and close over that area that was killed to reform the cylinder of healthy outer tissues that it would have. I've got like 20 seconds left before the music starts up here. So we can if you want to call back next week and continue this discussion. But right now, I don't see anything I would recommend you spray or do to it. Just give it some time to see if it can recover. If you can widen that mulched area bigger, it would be even better for it. It wants to live in a forest, not a meadow. And in our yard, it's living in a meadow. So give it a little wider mulched area, and then let's talk more when we come back next week, if you will. Sorry to have to run short. Yes, ma'am. The rest of you on emails and stuff, I will tackle them back when I get in here again next Thursday. Thank you for listening to Garden Success. We look forward to visiting with you next Thursday and every Thursday from 12 noon to 1 p.m.
You've been listening to Garden Success with retired Texas A&M AgriLife Extension horticulturist Skip Richter. Join us again next week as Skip discusses your questions about gardening and landscaping in the Brazos Valley.